I'll say it's finally, you say it's Friday. It's finally
Friday.
It's finally
Friday.
So here's the deal. I can look at every person that's here and say that in some way, we've done something together with CLD work. And what's amazing about preparing for this one, this is a second half of something we started earlier in the school year. But what's kind of fun about it is this is a session 6, which tells you we've done a lot of learning together with this as well. And what's remarkable is that no pandemic, no remote learning, no et cetera, has held us back from continuing this momentum. And I thank you for that, for your attention, your grace, and your pushing through with some steady learning.
Woo, everybody! Woo!
And that's why Emily Grimes is joining me today.
And it's me, it's Emily, being obnoxious.
So a couple of quick things. We will be accessing the Google Classroom. And it's that Boston CLD embedded language Google Classroom that will have all your handouts. Because we're finally having something in person, I do have some hard copies here as well, if that's a support to you. But we're also going to have small groups and partners to support the work today. Our expectations are this. Obviously, it's a Friday afternoon, obviously. But let's still be present and fully engage in the professional work to benefit our students. With this in mind, we are going to start with these groups that you have listed on the board today. And at any time, if you need to grab snacks or handouts, we'll make sure that you're comfortable and get ready for our learning today. So we're going to get started over here. Where this CLD-PD, we're going to review this process of intentionally embedding this content instruction. And we're going to get really into that differentiation piece, really differentiating by that language proficiency level. And today we're going to move into this last piece. The teachers that are upstairs meeting today are doing the work that we did last year. So they're finishing up kind of that vocabulary and language objectives. But we're moving into the real work. Is how do you differentiate for all of the language learners that are in your room? And how can we give you tools and support to do that? So here's what's happening. I'm going to give you a moment to quietly look up here and to read the SIP goal and the milestones. Read it quietly to yourself, and then give me a thumbs up when you're finished quietly reading.
I also wanted to acknowledge that if it is hard to see if there's a glare, the slides are in the Google Classroom. So sorry to interrupt your quiet thinking time.
Thank you. We really are on pace with getting to these milestones. Our focus today is really getting into those differentiated exemplars and also really choosing an assessment, making this authentic to the workload that you realistically have right now. And how do we take learning that we did last time and make it relevant to what we're doing now? We value your time and we don't want it wasted. So you're going to have some work time to really attend to that today. Okay. And continue. Okay. So somehow that was awesome. Okay. So anyway, let's go ahead and I'm going to have us echo repeat the first part of the target together. I'll sing, you sing. I will be able to.
I will be able to
use student data.
Use student data
And the WIDA performance definitions.
and the WIDA performance definitions
To differentiate.
An
assessment. For
For
various language proficiencies.
various language proficiencies.
Could I have a teacher read this second part? We have really 2 parts of our target today. Would someone be willing to read the second part of it for us?
Oh.
Ooh.
Oh, to choral read.
For instructional moves and scaffolds that will support students at various proficiency
ask for a better duo for that one. So that's what our focus is today. We're just to unwrap it. We're really going to look at the data that you did last time on those can-do charts. Start to think about who those students are in your classroom, and start to think about how do we now make exemplars that are proficient by that language level, and then how do we start to make these instructional moves? Not only what are we teaching, but how are we going to effectively teach this to all of our students? That's our work for today. Okay, so here's the thing. Last time that we were together, we really tried to give you some strong models with an I do, and we also did a we do, meaning that you worked in small groups. If you were here working on a Jamboard, and we appreciate and honor the thoughtful work that you did with that. Today, for those of you who weren't here, or for those of you who are need a quick review of it, we have written out some of these proficient responses for these language levels and put them on chart paper at your desks. And we're going to, in just a moment, kind of ground you with a very important document for this work. And that document is this one here, the RITA performance definitions. So that's going to be part of the connection to the work that we've done, and will be hopefully a useful tool for today as well as for future planning for your students. We're going to give you an example now of how we're expecting for you to do this work. I'm going to take right now a quick model of what it would look like to do a level 1 or an entering student. So I got this from the Jamboard, and this would be the equivalent of what you have written on chart paper. So here's an example. The first one said level 1, rhinos die or no water. And that was a great example for level 1. But today, I really want to push your thinking. I want you to turn back to these performance definitions here, which we'll hand out to you in a minute, and use this to start to really strengthen your response. You did the good thinking together, you collaborated, but now how do we take that and really align it to our expectations from a performance definition? Let me show you the next part. I have this chart paper that has the Jamboard response. And now over here, this is a kind of a focus on this bottom part of a level 1. And I'm looking right here at the 3 components. The first component is discourse. How is this all put together? And for a level 1, I know that they use words, phrases, or chunks of language. And they use single words used to represent ideas. I also know, and this is very important, this middle piece, this is the sentence level. So I'm going to look at phrase level, grammatical structures, phrasal patterns associated with common social and instructional situations. So I've got my discourse, I have my sentence level. Then I'm going to go to the farthest column where it has vocabulary. And I'm going to think about it, well, they need general content-related words, everyday social instructional language, some content-related words. I'm going to stop right there. So I've just rehashed what's happening right here on this chart. Now I'm going to show you how I apply it. In a few minutes, you're going to get some sticky notes to do this work as a team at your table. When you have these sticky notes, you're going to start to think about, how am I going to go through this process? Here's some metacognition that I was thinking through for this. I want to stay true to the language, but still achieve the outcome of the content standard. I want to simplify the language, but still include the function, which one of them was to compare and contrast. I want to use phrases. I want to use general content-related vocabulary. So when I start to look at this, I realize that this didn't really have the function yet of comparing and contrasting. So I'm going to push that and make a change, where I'm going to compare white rhinos and black rhinos. I'm going to say no food or have food. Those are short phrases, but it still communicates the idea of that food and drought. And I'm going to talk about they died, or I could even write a shortcut of die or live, the predicate. And that would still count for encompassing the meaning or the purpose of what was happening, to quickly compare and contrast those. So I've honored this level 1 on this performance definition. Chart paper, to checking it here, to making notes on a sticky note.
You can write right on the chart paper too. That would be okay.
no problem. Now, here's the deal. A lot of you, we've done some of this work together. And so in honoring the differentiation of a differentiated group, I also wanted to give a couple of other tools, because this is going to be the grounding work that's part of, as you saw, the SIP. But I put over here like a little, you know me. I put together something a little bit more. So you've got those performance definitions, but I also have the, if you want to help me kind of hold
Yes,
it
ma'am.
out.
Love to.
I also put down some proficiency level touchstones that kind of show how that language really changes, and it gets granular. It talks about pronouns, it talks about conjunctions, it talks about complex sentences. So when you're having a conversation at your table, it's another way, another model to check your work. If you've done ELD planning with me, which I can scan the room and say most of you have, we've used this before, the grammatical forms. This gets really granular. But we're a group that has people who have different levels in this work, and I want to honor that and let you go to the depth that you want to go. So this is the expectation we're all going to be using, but these are some other tools that we have in case your table is having a discussion and wants to go deeper.
And
Okay?
those are in the Google Classroom too, if you don't need the hard copy. Those are Google Classroom moments.
Excellent. All right. With that in mind, we want to give you some work time to take on this task. I see, are there any questions so far?
Sorry, yeah, quick question. So
Sure.
is our objective to annotate this and make it a stronger response while staying within the band?
Yes.
So if I'm a level
And to
one,
pull things out of that response to, like, that you see in that band of proficiency. So you see the band of proficiency on the bottom. You're gonna look at that, look at the response, pull things out from it that you notice, and if there's anything you need to add to strengthen it, do it on the sticky notes. Or you could underline and highlight as well.
The other piece too is that we had worked on a proficient response knowing that this is a 5th grade example. So if you want to see the proficient response again, to just double check your response, we always start with a proficient one to see where we're going. We have it in the Google Classroom, as Emily has alluded to, but we also have hard copies if that helps your group with them. So let's go ahead. I'll take one more check for understanding or questions about our task.
I'm starting the timer. Go ahead. Have fun. I wish there was something. I wish there was a
Put that on the table.
Yeah, that'd be great. Might as well record us. Why not? We'll record ours. Oh, good, level 2. Phew. I'm sure everyone was like, why on earth is she recording?
Okay. So
Okay.
we've got emerging.
Okay, so that's in the text. I think the drought affects the white and black rhinos. The white rhinos did not get food. They eat grass and plants. There was no rain. The black rhinos did get food. They eat leaves. There are more black rhinos than white rhinos. Okay.
how are you? Good.
We're saying formulaic structures.
Yeah, will you read like what it says?
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't have one. No, it's okay. So the first one, are you starting here with discourse? Okay, so phrase or short sentences, emerging expression of ideas.
So what you could do is either like notice and name what they already have here, or add to it with a sticky note. Because I think, I mean, both of the groups I think did a really nice job of pulling these things out.
Yeah.
But it'd be nice to kind of notice and name, like, where is that in the text?
And I mean, they mostly used short sentences.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, and so the next level up, just to like check it, it says short and some expanded sentences. I don't think there are. I think they're all Do you think that one is?
Maybe that one.
What do you want to say that is?
I don't know if that.
So like if we're looking at the sentence
be considered
dimension,
that?
repetitive phrasal and sentence patterns across content areas.
What about the first sentence? Is it complex? A little bit more.
After reading the text, I think the drought affects the white and black rhinos.
We got a huge phrase there.
It
at
is
the
a pretty
beginning.
big.
After
Yeah,
reading
I feel
the
like
text, that might be a
I feel
little
like
bit
it
closer
is
to
kind
this.
of going a little bit into.
That.
An
Like that
expanded
emerging
sentence?
complexity or expanded sentence, do you think?
Expanded sentences.
Yeah.
I have the official acceptable handwriting for Keela.
Yeah, you have been pre-approved.
Except this is a terrible mark.
You have been pre-approved to write. That is true. That is true.
Okay.
Except this is a
So
terrible
how would we
marker.
change that sentence to be
We
more?
just start with, I
I
think.
think the drought
Try it last.
affects the
Please
black
try
and white.
the
Yeah,
not the brown. This is all I've got. I
Yeah.
will help you find.
You think?
I think so. So do we want to?
Do we put, did we just take that out?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that a pencil? Is that a, that's probably gotta be a, so is
Right.
that on here?
Time check, just
Take
about
out
a
the
minute.
phrase in the first sentence?
Maybe we'll just put a note because
Because
an
it's more
expanded
than what
sentence.
this is.
Yeah.
It's pushing us more towards this. the
Yeah. So
developing.
we feel like you would just
Trying to
say.
make this into
A two. Yeah, that
Yeah. So we're
emerging.
thinking we should just say, I think the drought affects the black and white rhinos. For two, you don't think you disagree with that, Amy?
No, for a 2, that's what it would be. But if it were my student, I wouldn't take it out for them to stay a 2.
No,
No,
but no,
but
not
it's an
at all.
exemplar, right? That
Yeah.
we're
Oh,
working
yes.
on?
So this is above and emerging. Okay.
No,
I think-
I don't
It's
know that it
pushing more
necessarily
towards
is,
that
but
three.
that quote is.
I think
that
they
part
only.
is.
I think they have two sentences that need just some revision, so it stays in a two.
So that it's an exemplar for
Yeah.
a 2.
Well, I'm sure what the teachers would argue is that they have that sentence frame, so that that's why kids can use it, and that's true. But I think this is just like what they would be able to do without
Because we're
support.
trying to push towards independence, right?
Yes. So,
Well,
what are you
that's the-
writing on your sticky?
I'm writing remove
Remove the phrase.
phrase.
Okay.
Well, that's why you give them the
Well, that was
frame
enough
so you
time.
can use it. Right? But if you're
And then I
using
think
it
we
as
need
an
to rework
exemplar
this
for a
one.
2, you would take that out. Just this, right? After
Okay,
I
go
go
back
to
to the
text.
job.
And then what else?
All right. So thank you. We realized that that was just a quick snippet into just reviewing those responses and reviewing those language complexity levels. So thanks for engaging in that work. We're gonna move into kind of the what of our work together and kind of look at what this would really sound like and look like for both students and for teachers during their planning process. What do these proficiency levels actually look like when you're digging in the classroom? And what language do students need to be successful in the classroom with these? So we're going a little bit vintage. We're going to a 2019 I was Emily Grangs at the time, yes, but a quick little throwback to 2019. This is a 5th grade math lesson. And we chose this one because it's kind of like mid-range in between our elementary, our middle school. Hopefully that gives you a touch point. But we're gonna take a look at how I planned for these language complexities during my lesson and kind of give you the chance to do the same with upcoming lessons and assessments that are coming up for you guys. So I want to take you on a little journey to this 5th grade language lesson and math lesson. So my process that I kind of wanted to talk through quickly is that obviously, yes, I'm planning for content. I'm planning for a content target, which all of you are doing as well. And when we're expecting our learners to increase their discourse and to increase their writing and to increase these levels, and when we know that most of our Boston learners are at this level 2, level 3, we're pushing for some instructional moves and some vocabulary and sentence structures that are going to move that forward. So this is kind of like my version of the CLDE support plan that's in the Google Classroom. We're not telling you like you have to use the one that's in the Google Classroom, and it's a resource there that's, you know, provided for you so that you can think through the things that would really help push your student language. So what I would do first in this process is really take the assessment task and plan out a proficient response. That would be at that level 5 discourse and writing level, and you see that here with the sample student response. So in a moment, you're gonna see this in action with the cutest 5th graders who are now 7th graders. But what I'm doing is I'm responding to the prompt as a proficient 5th grader would. And this is what you all are probably doing already with an exit ticket, with a story problem, with a written response to reading, with a racer response, right? So you're writing your response, and then you're pulling out that language, which is what you just did with your level 2, level 3 responses on the paper. You're looking for sentence frames. You're looking for the bricks and mortar of that vocabulary. You're looking for the function. So in this case, cause and effect. The prompt was something like, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but you'll see it in a moment. It was something like, this person mowed this much of the lawn. There was this much left to mow. How much is left to mow? Or how much did Summer mow? So we're saying, I knew this because blank. I'm explaining my process, and I'm sequencing. And so I highlighted those sentence frames that you're gonna see the kids and myself modeling during the lesson. Did I hit everything there, you think, Jen?
I think so. The slide deck has the link to the lesson. We have hard copies as well. So if you need anything, just raise your hand. We can figure it out.
Yeah, and this is an example we used last time too, but similar process, right? Like we've got our level 3 response and the teacher pulled out the language from there. Our level 2 response, the teacher pulled out the language from there. So really, once you write that proficient response, you then can differentiate for those different levels that are in your classroom.
I wanted to just kind of emphasize or elevate something that I noticed when we were doing the activity right now. But the level 1 that I modeled really had those phrases and short sentences. And a level 2 is really gonna have simple sentences. Like I was thinking about the group over there for level 2, they were doing a great job of like analyzing the language in there. And I was thinking about like even just that first clause is a complex clause. It brings it to a level 3 by having kind of an adverbial clause to start it off. A level 2 is just simple. It's a simple sentence. And a level 3 is where they start to do those compound and expanded sentences. So that's kind of a cheat sheet when you're listening to the lesson today and something when we're doing our work today for those 3 levels.
Yeah. So something that I did then was I pulled out some of these exemplars and the frames for you. And so here's the prompt that I couldn't remember off the top of my head. George mowed 1/6 of the lawn. Summer mowed some too. When they were finished, 2/3 of the yard still needed to be mowed. What fraction of the yard did Summer mow? And so that's the content, like that's the math. And we'll skip the learning target part of the video, the content learning target, but the content learning is about adding and subtracting fractions with common denominators. So that's the content. Maybe your content is, I can compare and contrast character traits, like whatever your content is, and then your language target comes in. So my language that I wanted to see from the students was with those functions of sequencing. They're sequencing their steps to solve the problem. They're explaining their steps. They're describing. So those are the functions for the language. And so I'd like, if you don't mind, for them to have the hard copy of this, just so that you don't get like bogged down with clicking a million things. But there's the proficient level response for level 5 and 6. There's our level 3, and you can see it kind of differentiating down from there for the students that we actually see in our classroom, so that now I can see like, what would I expect so that I know that they met the learning target and that they met the language target too. Is there any questions about kind of my planning process on that? There's a great little, like, I wanted to point this out, this tool, but if you're not like a hard copy planning sheet kind of tool friend, you can absolutely make a copy of my lesson plan and use what I already wrote. So as you're kind of looking at those responses, you're just thinking, and as you're writing your own responses, am I making it grade level appropriate? Am I making it rigorous? But is it also appropriate for my language level? So Jen kind of elevated the fact that level 2 was actually closer to a level 3. So like, are we expecting enough? But are we also being realistic with, here's the level of discourse and writing that I'm expecting from each of these students, and I'm knowing my students really well so that I know if they've actually met the learning and language target. Okay? And then, yes, are the differentiated responses true to the language proficiency, but they still achieve the outcome of the content standard, right? So even with that very simple one that you'll see on there of like, I did this number, this number. First, this number. We're still achieving the content standard because they're finding the common denominator, they're adding and subtracting the fractions, and they're coming up with the correct answer. Okay. This is gonna be some work time then for you, because we want this to be valuable for you as teachers. We know CMAS is coming, we know there's a lot on your plate, so we want you to be able to take something that you're actually going to be doing in your classroom, plan for it, plan for a content and language target, which you're probably already doing, looking at all of you and knowing how amazing you guys are, and then considering some responses for level 1, 2, and 3, starting with the level where you have the most students first. So you have your proficient response, but you're also differentiating for your learners. So if you know you have a lot of level 3 learners, spend some time on that one and like differentiating. And Jen and I will be around to help with that too. So yes, here's your task here. You're using an upcoming content assessment or task. Hopefully you had a second to think about that in your super busy weeks, but if you didn't, great time to just find a little Bridges assessment, find a science assessment, something, and then create a proficient response first, and then differentiate your other exemplars with sentence frames, making sure to pull out those ones using your WIDA performance definitions. Yes? Sound great? Amazing!
Work time.
All right, go for it. Oh yes. What do you think, Jen? They want to watch the video? I think,
So what we're gonna, so it was a teaser.
yes, that was the
It's a
teaser
teaser.
of the video. It's
So
coming.
it's a teaser.
We want
like,
you to work.
We're gonna let you work, and then we're gonna pull you back to watch the video, right?
Okay.
So you get both.
So there you go. You will get to watch the video, and they're super adorable, and it's coming.
Work
But
time,
work,
and snacks.
enjoy, listen to Hosier Radio. It's